Right. Well, good evening to everybody on Facebook and YouTube. Thank you for joining us tonight for another edition of The Locker Room. As you know, we do this every month. We do it on the last Monday of every month. We come on and we present dialogue on various topics. We primarily try to do topics that are important to men, but we kind of venture it out and we kind of touch on everything that kind of hits everybody. And we just have great dialogue. And so tonight I'm excited because this is a conversation that I've been wanting to have for a long time on The Locker Room. And I just kind of had to wait for the right time. And this kind of felt like the right time to do it. And I had to make sure I had the right guests that I need to have on for it. And so everything has come together. And so we're going to bring you this conversation tonight. And so again, I want everybody, if you can, to please go ahead and share this broadcast on your Facebook page, share it from YouTube if you're watching on YouTube, and get everybody you can to be on this live tonight, because this is going to be powerful. We have some great guests on. And so I want to go and introduce them really quickly so we can get started. Right next to me at the top, this guy, I've known him for some years now. He's one of the top best drummers we have in the region. Dare I say, in the state of New York. He's always been a humble guy, always been a respectable for as long as I've known him. He's a serious, committed to what he does, to his craft, and it shows. When you hear him play, when you see him perform, and you see him doing different things, it shows. And I'm just glad that he had the time to come and hang out with us tonight. And so I want to introduce to everybody. Most everybody know him everywhere, but I just want to reintroduce him.
Yeah, okay.
My man, Carlton Campbell. What's going on, Carl? How you doing?
Praise the Lord, everybody. Y'all put in the comments, praise the Lord. It's good to be here, but thanks for the invite. Thanks for the invite. And
yes.
Let's see what we can discuss tonight.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And then right next to him, this guy, we've been knowing each other for many, many years. He's been a mentor of mine musically, really got me started playing seriously for real, and allowed me to, watch him, follow around with him. And I learned so much being his company, and not just from a musician standpoint, but he's been a true brother to me. He's been a big brother to me for all the years that I've known him. And everybody is not a big brother for real. That's not a title I throw around loosely. But he has definitely earned my respect as a big brother. And I appreciate him. He's another great musician and producer in his own right. Been everywhere, done some of everything, wealth of knowledge and wisdom. And I appreciate him being on with us tonight, accepting. This is what everybody know. This is Elder Jonathan Boyd. JB, yes, what's going on, man?
What's happening, everybody? Appreciate it. No, that was whack, right? I appreciate being on for the invite, and especially in the company of these great musicians. And so I'm just humbled, I should say, to be a part of the conversation. So let's get it in.
All right. Down below me is another guy who has shown to be another friend, brother of mine. I've known him for a very long time. Since the 90s, have known him, and he is one of the just baddest bass players ever you wanted to hear, who's been everywhere, done some of everything in the industry. Cal is a you see what you get kind of guy. He's a straight shooter. Always going to tell you the truth. He's always going to tell you how he feels. And I respect him highly for not only his musical ability, but I respect him for his wealth of knowledge and understanding that he has, and always trying to lend a hand to try to help the generation below him. And so I'm glad he's also on with us tonight. And it's my man Calvin Palmer. Cal, what's going on, sir?
And again, I'm grateful and honored to even be a part of any of this. And it's beautiful because these are the discussions that we have off camera. So just to allow me to be a part and have a few things to say, I'm grateful. And I just want to personally say thank you to everyone.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And last but not least, I don't know what to say about this guy. He's just not from planet Earth. That's all I can say. Been listening to him play ever since the first time I heard him play when he was younger. He came up here for a birthday musical, came with his brother Doobie. It was a birthday musical for Kevin Camp. And they came to the church that I was playing at the time. And from that first time hearing him, I was like, this kid is phenomenal. And just to see all of the things that he has done since that time and matriculated. I mean, he's played for everybody. Just pick an artist. He's probably played and produced for them, been everywhere, wealth of knowledge. Every time I hear him play, I learn something new. And from the one time, the brief time that I did meet him and did have words, very humble guy, such an humble spirit. Even though as great as he is at what he does, humble spirit, really loves God. And I appreciate him agreeing to be on with us tonight, because with us not really having a relationship, I just reached out and I said, man, would you be interested? And he said, man, I would love to do it if I'm available. And he was available. So I personally am, really honored and humbled that he accepted to come and be with us tonight. And so I just want to shout out to everybody. Everybody knows him, but if you don't know him, you would know him after tonight. And that is brother Kevin Powell. Kevin, how you doing, sir?
Sure.
Listen, everybody, man. I'm happy to be here. Really honored that y'all would consider me amongst this panel of great musicians, man. Shout out to all y'all, and just happy to be here, man. Thanks for the invite, Blair, man. And you're talking about everybody, but you a bad boy yourself, man. So
Amen.
Thank you,
Amen.
man. Appreciate it.
The times I've heard you play, man, it's very inspiring, man. Keep doing what you're doing. But
Appreciate it.
I'm happy to be here. Happy to be here, hang out and talk about this great industry we know as the gospel industry. So I'm ready to go into it. Let's do it.
Awesome. So we're gonna get right into it. The title tonight is, as everyone has seen on the flyer, is called Behind the Music. It ain't just gospel anymore. And gospel music has really evolved and changed over, I would say, the last probably 30, 40 years. When you mention gospel, I mean, there's so many great names that come to mind. I mean, you can go all the way back to, the Mahalia Jackson era. And then that was an era of gospel music. And then the Hawkins come, and then here comes Oh Happy Day. And now that's another shift, in era. And then in the 80s, to me, the 80s was just the choir era. You had choirs everywhere, and choir music was popular and really going. And then you bring it on up, and then, you have people like Kirk Franklin, they come, bring something different. And Fred comes, he brings something different. John P. Key he's coming and he brings something different. And different sounds, different ways of approaching gospel music. And now you bring it even up to the 2000s and today, where, praise and worship starts to now jump out and kind of be in somewhat of the forefront. And it's called praise and worship, but in church, we called it devotion service. And so from devotion service, it gets the name of, well, this is praise and worship now. And so, and now you have all of the different artists who start to emerge and arise in this. And so bring it up to even where we are now, there's like a CCM rising that is now coming into particularly the Black church has been embracing it and is making its way, and it almost seems as though it's kind of dominating somewhat to what the music is. And so tonight we just kind of want to talk about that evolution, and we want to talk about how it has been affected by different other types such as CCM. Because if you take 100 people and you split them in half, you're probably going to get half who are going to say they love the sound, they love the evolution. And then you kind of have the other half who might say, well, y'all call it gospel music, but that ain't really gospel music, because it sounds like R&B. That sounds like the worldly stuff, depending on what era you grew up in, depending on where you come from. So I want to start off by just asking each one of you to just kind of really, really quick to just kind of talk a little bit about what you have seen happen in gospel music over these last years, over these last 3 to 4 decades. What have you seen happen in gospel music? And, have you seen it as a good thing or not a good thing? What, based on your perspective. And so we're going to start with Carlton. We're just going to go on the line. We're going to start with Carlton, and we'll go to Jonathan, Cal, and then we'll come to Kevin.
Great question. So the evolution of gospel and where we are now is kind of interesting, because every time there's been a change, it's been kind of weird not weird, but it's kind of been pushed against. So I remember hearing stories of my parents talking about them being fans of Andre Crouch and the Winans and the Hawkins, but how my grandparents didn't like that music because it wasn't Thomas Dorsey, it wasn't the Caravans, it wasn't James Cleveland, right? Because the progressions that they were bringing in were, to them, secular or rock and roll, as the Saints would call it, right? And it was always interesting. But if you look at what those pioneers, they're pioneers for us now, or at least for my generation, that my parents started listening to, that helped us get the Thomas Whitfields, the Thompson Community Choir. That helped us get the Powell family. So we don't have, Hubert Powell, rest in peace. We don't have him, which then has a whole offshoot of the Powell brothers. We don't have John P. Keys. We don't have that whole movement if we don't evolve, right? So with all of that, evolution is needed, because you can't stay stagnant. You can't pour old wine into, new wine into old wineskin, right? That parable is there for a reason. I think the issue that may be happening now is, what are we leaving behind that helped us become what we were or who we are in gospel? And I think that's what the problem is coming, or is becoming, in regards to how are we developing. So the way music is going now, everything is 4 chords, 1, 4, 6, 5, and then some iteration of that. But how is that spawning creativity to where you're going to get all of these artists that help build what this genre of gospel is? We're losing that. Now, some may say that's not a problem because, hey, I can't play that style anyways, or I don't need all of that in the music. That's fine and well, but why are we leaving it behind? I think that's the question that needs to be asked, is why are we leaving it behind? Why are we now finding a problem with intros like what James Fortune may do? Or, why is that a problem opposed to everything's a drone pad and then a big guitar swell? Why are we taking organ out of production and then throwing in all these guitars? Like, these questions need to be asked for a reason, not just to say we don't like it. It's like we're throwing out the baby and the bathwater at the same time, all because of a fad. And I'm saying it's a fad because if you look at the first introduction of CCM to gospel, and I'm gonna wrap it up here from my first take, is Michael W. Smith and all of them, right? When they first came in, their genre has evolved in CCM, but we don't see it that way because all we know are Chris Tomlin and Michael and elevation worship and Hillsong, right? That became the premise that everybody started gleaning from and then bringing it over here. But why did that genre end up evolving? And then see how they progress forward. I mean, you only see this infighting in gospel. You don't see it in their genre of music. We only see it over here. They don't downplay their history. Why are we downplaying ours? Why are we disrespecting, again, the Whitfields, the Clarks, the Hawkins, the Winans, Yolanda Adams, the Kimberells, the Thompson Community Choir, Donald Lawrence and Tri-City, Donald Lawrence Individual, like all these names on and on and on and on. Why are we distancing ourselves from them? That's what I would pose as a counter question in that regard.
That's good, man. Go ahead, Jonathan.
So just to piggyback on a lot of what Carlton said, he brought up some great points. My very quick spin on it is I think that another reason why we have such issue is because it's been an exodus of our culture in terms of what we know it, in terms of how we got here. Gospel music started all the way back on slave ships, and the slave ships, their music was connected to their experience, right? And so their experience, that's why we're able to connect with our culture because of the experience. And so as you know, we've been matriculating through these years from the slave ships to Mahalia Jackson to the even Protestant, Anglican and Protestants, you know, some of that is in there as well in the beginnings. And then we go from, like Carlton said, from Mahalia Jackson, Thomas Dorsey, which, if my memory serves me correct, is known as the godfather of gospel music. And then we go from that to James Cleveland, from that to some groups that Carlton already mentioned, so I don't want to be redundant. But now we get here, you know, in 2022, and we're almost inundated with CCM. So I think that speaks to a couple of things. Number one, it speaks to we're not necessarily, in terms of writing and in terms of, like Carlton said, chord progressions and overall creativity, it doesn't speak to the experience anymore. It speaks to the marketplace, because we're not writing music and producing music that speaks to our experience, but speaks to the drive of the business. And the drive of the business right now is CCM, because I want to say the message hasn't changed, because CCM has been here since the 60s, if I make no mistake. So it's not like CCM is new, but it's new to the gospel experience. And why did we, you know, gospelize it, so to speak? Or why are we promoting it so heavy? It's because I think it's been an exodus in some respects to our experience and what brought us over. In terms of now, it's not it's not about creativity. It's not about you know, musicianship. It's not about, like Carlton said, it's the 6, you know, 4, 3, 1, you know, flat 7. It's that now. It's simple because it speaks to the marketplace and not necessarily, you know, we're not as creators, we're not creating from the soul anymore. We're not creating from the healthy place and being comfortable in our own skin in terms of what comes out. You know, the driving force is the marketplace. And that's okay. I mean, you know, if you're trying to, you know, it's all subjective, in my opinion. It's all subjective. So, and I don't necessarily have a problem with CCM. I think that I have a problem with the exodus from what the gospel experience used to sound like. So, to the previous point, everything has to change because every paradigm or every dispensation changes. And so the music has to change to fit the times that we're in. And I don't have a problem with that. It's just, how do we marry what we were, where we are, and where we're going, so it can be seamless. And that's my 2 cents on it.
That's good. That's good stuff, man. Cal?
You know, but what you guys just talked about, you nailed it on the head. I'm probably the oldest one out of this bunch. And not a lot of people know, I actually grew up Church of God. So Church of God was multicultural. Now, you had the Black churches that were part of the organization, and we had devotion service. We had 2 women's leading a song, a bass drum, maybe some cymbals. It was that type of church. Foot washing service Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, Tuesday, Wednesday. That's what it was. But when we would go to camp meeting in the South Towns, tent revival, Shambach comes in and they're singing the Jehovah Jirehs and what we consider to be CCM. To me, it was more Southern gospel, but it was CCM. But we would still get up and sing our stuff, and they would get with it. And there was a flavor that we brought that still was a part of the organization without necessarily diluting or changing who we were as a culture. Now, to address where, everyone said, well, all things must change, which they do. My dad tells the stories of how when Sister Rosetta Tharpe started coming on the radio, they said they weren't getting with this big woman who was playing and killing on electric and singing Up Above My Head. That was the blues to them. So they didn't get with it, and it was the same thing progressively through history, whereby where music begins to shift a little bit, there isn't, a lot of acceptance by maybe the generation prior or even before that, because it's just something they don't understand or didn't identify with. It didn't mean that there was anything wrong with it or that it didn't have its place in history or our experience. But it just wasn't accepted. But that's just how music works, from all the way down to the Hawkins, all the way down to when the shift, for me, I saw the shift happen more so in the early 90s. When Fred came out with Radical for Christ, that's when I started to see it wasn't devotion service anymore. I started seeing praise teams coming in. Then eventually, as you start to go a little further down, you get into the late 90s, early 2000s. That's when you get to Judy Christie McAllister, which totally changed the sound of Black church. And what I'm saying now is this, and I'm only saying this because I've heard it in studios. I've heard producers say it. I've heard, and this was through the years, we're going to do what sells. Now, if you can get the Dove Award and go platinum, which was considered whatever platinum looks like, it doesn't look like that now, it streams. But if that sound was selling, it would only make sense eventually to move in a direction, from a business mindset that would reach more people and at the same time generate income. It's not a new sound. It's new to the Black experience, but how much of this gentrification that's happening, how much of us are we giving away? I don't have a problem with it. But when you have a praise team they can sing all of that stuff, but when it's time to go to perfect peace, what's that? What? There's no, it's almost like you're just consuming half the loaf. You're not taking in everything. And I'm just not seeing what I saw in Black church when I started. I don't know the last time I saw somebody lay their cigarettes on the altar. I don't know the last time I saw somebody get up out their wheelchair. I don't know. And I'm not saying it's just the music, but the music has a lot to do with it, with ushering in the Spirit of God and the gospel. If the gospel is the gospel, we're talking Bible, we're talking lyricism that is based in scripture, that changes as well. as to include, and it becomes inclusion and acceptance, and that's okay. But how much of us are we giving away to accept and be included?
Man, that was good. Kevin, what you got, man?
Look, man, I ain't got nothing, man. Y'all done said everything, man. Y'all done said everything that need to be said, man. But I mean, real talk. I'm really gonna piggyback off of everything that was said in a way, and I'm gonna try and hurry up I'm gonna try and hurry up to my closing. But I mean, the evolution of gospel. I mean, you know, there's I believe there's pros and cons to it. Like they said, you know, the good about the evolution of gospel is the creativity. I think some of them have talked about how it evolved down through the years, you know, and people who are not, you know, informed don't realize that a lot of gospel music evolved from jazz, it evolved from progressions. You know, even when you talk about Thomas Dorsey, you know, who penned, you know, penned the first gospel song and whatnot, and Precious Lord and whatnot. A lot of that derived from jazz. So it's like when you talk about how it evolved, you know, the good things are, you know, the creativity. You know, we are able to go back and expand our vocabularies, you know, like when it talks about playing skillfully, you know, from a spiritual standpoint, you know, you talk about playing skillfully, that doesn't mean just play 4 chords skillfully. It means expand what you know or what you need to know. This music is so great in so many ways, you know, there's so much to learn and to know about playing. So many ways to be great in what you do. So even when you're doing it in church, you know, when you're playing skillfully, that means, you know, expand your vocabulary, expand what it is. So I think that's good. There's less boundaries in gospel music now than there's ever been, you know, and I think, you know, we have the propensity to target different audiences for different styles of gospel music, which wasn't really a thing back then. It was either this was the gospel or it wasn't the gospel. And so I think now it's really dope that you can have groups that bring forth a gospel sound versus choirs that are trying to preserve a certain gospel sound. You know, bringing forth and preserving are 2 different things. So I think that's really dope. And then you have, you know, artists, you know, who are, you know, people who are out there and artists, single artists that are doing what they're doing to bring forth the gospel sound. So it's so different. It's a lot of different audiences for gospel music now. Now the cons, I think, you know, I think sometimes people tend to overcreate, you know, overproduce. Those are some of the things that I've heard just in the industry about gospel music in some cases, like, you know, it's overproduced, you know, it's too much. The simplicity of what was supposed to be creative is now overcreated. And, you know, now we don't get it because there's so many moving pieces, you know. And then you have on the other flip side, I don't want to sound like I'm on both sides of coins, but then you have on the other flip side where people have gotten lazy in their creating. So you got people who overcreate, then you got people who don't spend enough time executing what they are trying to create. They get lazy and they drop the ball somewhere. And you see that a lot in gospel music. You see a lot of the ups and downs. It's literally fluctuating right before our eyes. If you listen to XM radio, you might hear something dope. And then the next one you hear is like, man, they should have spent a little bit more time on the song and production. Then you go to the next one, oh man, this is dope. The next one, who is this? You know, so it's like, you know, you're fluctuating like crazy because people have gotten really lazy, and a lot of people have settled what's already out. You know, they settle with what's already out, and they try to recreate what's already out. And I think that's the problem in our genre as well. One thing for sure, certain people are going to sound like themselves no matter what, you know. And there's always a big difference between Kirk Franklin and the other artists, between Yolanda Adams and this other lady who's singing, you know, a Yolanda Adams like style. There's always gonna be Kirk Franklin, Yolanda, Donald Lawrence, Richard Smallwood. We don't give Richard Smallwood enough credit, but Richard Smallwood is just beyond incredible to me that, you know, he's still who he is in 2022, which is amazing. But his style is untouched. You know, it's untouched, and he has a very unique style. These people stand out because they are like the tail end of people who really cared about individuality. They cared about not sounding like the next person, you know. And I think Brother Carlton, he said something when, and one of my things about today's world is that they don't know about growing up and being able to go to concerts and hear 4 or 5 different amazing artists that sounded nothing alike. Nowadays, you go to concerts and everybody sounds exactly alike. Everybody's going up there singing cover tunes, singing praise and worship, you know, trying to get in the house, scared to sing their own music. I see artists that have written and put out music on iTunes, and then they get called to a gig and they sing somebody else's stuff. And it's like, why have we lost the edge to stretch out and be different, be individual, be an individual in this industry, you know? And it's just, you know, of course, you know, you talk about the CCM, you know, I'll say, you know, to that point, you know, before I take my seat, you know, CCM, I love CCM. I love CCM. I believe even CCM, and I think Cal, Brother Palmer just said this, it's gotten watered down over the years. You can't talk about CCM without talking about people like Ron Kenoly. You know, you don't know who Ron Kenoly is, you don't know CCM. I'm gonna just tell you that now. It ain't these folk from overseas. CCM has been around for a long time, and one of the first CCM artists I knew of that really transcended a sound that even the Black church can try and adapt to. My dad, my late father, even was, you know, adapted to his music in the early 90s, was Ron Kenoly. And his music wasn't simple for two and three chords. His music, it was CCM, and it was creative. So the question then becomes, you know, when it comes to CCM, are you adapting to the sound that it has gotten watered down to because you're lazy and you don't want to challenge yourself? Or are you adapting to it because it's a sound that speaks to you, that it's a sound that you prefer? You know, and I'm gonna stop right there because we can go. I got so much I can say about that, and we'll probably jump back into that, and you know, but that's my 2 cents, man.
Man, that was good. Everything all of you said, from the creative side, as well as the business and the marketplace side, and how that has sometimes also dictates, you know, what comes out. So, having said that, each of you are producers in your own right. And you know, you've written music or produced music and whatever it is. So tell me how can I say it? Have you been able to find that happy median so that not only can you still be creative, and I want to use the term that Jonathan used of writing from the soul, where you can still be creative, but also be what would be considered marketplace worthy? As a producer throughout this current transition where we are, you know, have you been able to find that happy medium? And how were you able to do it without losing your specific touch as it relates to the music, of me knowing that when I hear something that Carlton has produced, I know Carlton produced it. When I hear something Kevin Powell, I know Kevin produced it. I know Jonathan produces. I know Cal produced this. Even if I've never heard the song before, 5 seconds after I hit play, right off the bat, I can say, oh, I know who did this. So how have you been able to find that happy medium? And then secondly, I think, what did I say? How are you able to find that happy medium? And I think I said, how did you get there? I hope that's what I asked. But mainly, how did you find that happy medium so that your creativity is not stifled and you're still able to maintain your own individuality? Let's start with Jonathan this time, and we'll go reverse. Jonathan to Kevin, Cal, then Carlton.
Okay, so for me, as it relates to gospel, because I produce, R&B as well, but in terms of gospel, I don't know how to put it, so I guess I'm just gonna say it how I feel it. I don't necessarily. I guess first of all, I think your question is subjective because you're probably gonna get a different answer from all of us. So having stated that, I think it's about how we perceive what the market is. Are we producing for the marketplace, or are we producing from the soul? For me, I have this habit of producing what I feel. And if it sticks to the wall, then it sticks to the wall. And if it doesn't, then it doesn't. But I'm okay at the end of the day if I don't get a Dove or a Grammy or a Stellar because, it didn't do well in the marketplace. It didn't chart. Of course, every producer in his own right, at the end of the day wants, any producer worth his salt wants to achieve those things. But at the end of the day, I can't sell myself to the marketplace. So having stated that, I can sleep good at night knowing that whatever I produce, I empty my soul into that music. And if it charts, cool. I would love that. But if it doesn't, it's okay. And I'm okay with that because I can sleep good at night knowing that I didn't sell my soul to the marketplace. That's my answer.
Cool. Kevin?
Well, I mean, for me, I think as a producer, one thing that I've learned to do is to pay attention to what it is that the artist wants. Like one of the main things I do when I'm dealing with an artist, you got to know, like for me, I want to know how musical that artist is. So as a producer, I want to know, do you know what you want to hear? Do you actually know what you want on this track or whatever? Or versus do you just giving me 100% creative control? Because that's a whole nother side that I think me and even Jonathan will talk about is, having the ability to have full creative control. Like how deep can I go with? I like to have all these things, because some artists will say, do this and do that. So one thing that I've learned in this industry is that a lot of times, sometimes it sucks. It really sucks. But sometimes you have to remove, what you feel right here for that particular artist, because at the end of the day, you're the producer, they're the artist. If they want their music to do X, Y, Z, sometimes I feel like I'll just if they want it really watered down, but I'll find a way to sneak me in there. Whether it might be like a chord progression, a turnaround, or, the way the drums is playing a song. But a lot of times it's, when you're dealing with artists, sometimes you're dealing with artists who know what they want to hear, or they have a particular, sound. Like I was dealing with one artist and I didn't know that she played keys. So while I was trying to do X, Y, Z, she finally came over, was like, no, I want this. And she started playing it. And I'm like, oh, snap. Oh, okay, well, excuse me. So let me go and let me do this because this is what you want to hear. And it's cool. So you just really have to know what the artist wants. I'll say, I'll also say, there was a time, and I think Jonathan said this earlier about the marketplace. There was a time where the marketplace, wanted what we had to offer. and that marketplace, the people, the gatekeepers and all the people at the heads, those people have changed. And a lot of those people are not as musical as they once were. There was a time where the people in the marketplace understood what we were doing. And now the people in the marketplace, they only understand what's selling. They don't understand what's creative. They only understand what's selling. So a lot of times they'll go off of what worked for another artist. They'll go off of what worked for these guys. They go off of what worked for Chris Tomlin and all those people. And they want that. They don't want nobody to create the next wave. And it's very rare that you see that. And it's like you ask yourself, why is that an issue in today's world? Well, that's the reason. A lot of people who are in the marketplace, they're not the people who they used to be. They're not the people who craved creativity, who craved originality. Back in those days, what I talked about, and this all falls under production. When you had Thomas Whitfield, Clark Sisters, Vanessa Bell Armstrong, and somebody else, all on the Hawkins, all on the same concert, and it was 4 different levels of great. It was 4 different categories of greatness. It was just like everybody was great, but none of them sounded alike. So it's like when you're producing, a lot of times you get those artists that get you, and they want you to just like play what you feel. And those are the artists I really love working with the most, because I do have faith, in that what we play in our soul, like what Jonathan was talking about, what we play, what we feel in our soul. I do have faith that will become the forefront one day again. And it's not just going to be commercialized, ABC, XYZ, play this and get the song over, let it be 3.5 minutes for radio, and hope and pay somebody a bunch of money a month to market your song. Because you gotta keep in mind all those other aspects, that a lot of stuff that's really making it. It's not that it's dope, it's that people have money to make you like it. So it's a lot of music out there that I'm finding out that people produce with their soul, and you're like, man, why isn't this mainstream? Because the folks who are mainstream, they paying top dollar a month for people to play their stuff on the radio. Mm-hmm. And the people that's considered underground, underdogs. I mean, people consider my brother Doobie an underground artist. Somebody said that to Doobie recently. Oh man, you just an underground artist. But how is that so? Is it because he's not playing those, industry games with y'all? Because a lot of these folk, they doing a lot of stuff. And, I'm getting into a whole nother, let me shut up, because I'm getting into a whole nother spill of stuff.
You good, man.
And for streams, man.
They paying for these streams. They got financial backing. There's some gospel artists out there that's kind of, cornering the whole industry right now. But the truth be told, they had money, they have funding to do what they were doing. And so now that they trying to corner everybody else. And, some of these artists, they had great backing. They had great money to put behind marketing, to put behind getting their music in rotation. It's not like it used to be, even though like people paid back in the day, some people, they was greasing palms and stuff, but there was a time when people just craved dope music and they wanted to play it on their radio stations. They wanted to just play it because it's dope, and that's not really the case now. So it's like you get into all those games when you're producing, and I've had people who've told me like, you got to dull it down. Can you take this out? Can you take that out? Because, we want to appeal to this part. We want them to hear it on the radio like this. And I'm like, really? Like this, y'all really doing this? Like, that's crazy. But, I've had artists, and some of those artists I've chosen not to work with them anymore, because it's like, at the end of the day, I believe with all my heart that what we put our heart into it'll become the forefront again. It'll become what people will want to hear. They'll feel the hours of slaving behind the stove, like some people say, being in the kitchen. This is our stove, slaving behind a hot stove in the studio, mixing for hours and creating tracks and creating sounds and doing all that stuff for hours. I believe that one day that will get back to mainstream. So in that sense, I encourage people to keep the faith and keep doing what you're doing, like Jonathan was talking about. But yeah, it's always going to be a struggle, depending on who you're working with.
Cool. That's good, man. Cal.
Whew. I want to say it as you know me. I want to try to say it the correct way.
Man, just say it.
Man, it's not. Man, you're gonna sell yourself. You're gonna sell yourself. If you want to hit, you're gonna sell yourself. That's just how the game works. I played on so many records, man, and literally everything that I would play, mainly the stuff that I didn't like, that would be the hit. And all I worried about, okay, I'm getting my quarterly check. And I was okay with that. And then I would go somewhere and play something I liked, whether it was jazz, pop, or go to a midnight musical and play. But when you're talking about business, it's not about, I get the part about putting your soul into things. But we're already, as creatives, a small percentage of the world that they don't get us. We're the same ones that will say, we're going to leave a stable 9-to-5 to pursue something that's in our soul. And it's like, man, that's stupid. Have a backup plan. We're already a small subculture as it is. So already our mindsets and our thinking are high evolutionary. Like the stuff we're going to come up with wouldn't even probably be appreciated till 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now. I always tell musicians, whether gospel, R&B, it doesn't matter what they're into. Go watch the documentary about the Funk Brothers. Those are the guys who did all of the Motown hits. Barry got all of the money, and they hated all of the stuff that they were going and playing. What? Heard it through the grapevine. Man, that's crazy. I can't wait till I get back to the club to go play my jazz. They were all jazz musicians. But jazz wasn't making, it was just what they liked to do. It was a regular gig, but that was pop culture. So pop culture, unfortunately, puts you in a position where you kind of have to compromise. You kind of have to sell yourself a little bit, but it's a job. In no sense, it's a job, and we want to be grateful, to God to have a job or being able to survive or operate in our gifting. But it's been a long time since I've heard a producer say they put their soul into some music. I don't even think I've heard that expression since the mid 2000s. That's just me personally. I can't speak for everyone, but there's going to be some selling of self if you want to get that material or you want to work with those profile of artists. And I get even, most of these people who come in, Kevin just said it. Fortunately, you had opportunity to work with someone who's musical, who could get it like, oh, okay. And they can articulate. Most of the time, if I'm working with somebody, I want that, and they're banging on the console hole. I want that beat like, hey man, like they don't know what they want. So you try to articulate and understand and be a mind reader at the same time, but at the same time you're thinking this is not dope. It's not great. I mean, I'm going to get flack for this. I don't like that break my soul song. I don't like it, but I knew it was going to be a hit the first time I heard it. Now, and that's where it gets tricky, because do you want to, when we're talking about reaching the masses, that's what we're supposed to do, reach the masses. How do we get the masses if what we like is just a small group? So that's where we have to kind of learn to be flexible and be all things to all people and figure out, sometimes maybe put aside what we think is dope and maybe, give people, everybody can't handle heavy food. So give them the message the best way that you possibly can. And, maybe that check will make you sleep better at night.
I'm sorry to butt in, but what you just said with the heavy food, that's deep because that's actually scripture. And I was reading that, and I think in First Chronicles or something, or Corinthians, I'm not sure which I think it was like the 3rd chapter, and they were saying how he gave them milk because he couldn't give them heavy food because they weren't ready to digest it. Like he was speaking in parables. So yeah, that's heavy because sometimes you gotta give them something light. And I've even tried to, get into some of that music, like, okay, maybe if I get into it this way, maybe I can feel it, but of course you got the other part of people being able to, make their music dope. This is the day we live in. People make anything dope. Money makes the world go round. But let me shut up.
Cal, you good or you still going? You good?
No, that was it. It.
Go ahead, Carl. What you got?
Man. May we all rise. I mean, because everybody hit the point. You try to be yourself. If any artist is coming to you to produce the record for them, they want something that you have to offer in some form or fashion. So the fact that you're having that conversation, they want you. Now, where it gets tough is, as everyone has said already, is do you produce for the marketplace or do you produce for what's going to service the song? And sometimes it's hard to service the song because the song's a cover. Like, how many artists are actually bringing to the table original music? And I think Kevin said this, like, hey, what music do you like? Okay, can that artist name you 5 artists that inspired this song that they want you to produce? Because you got to have a track record of what inspired you to write this. What made you say that, right? And so our topic is gospel and CCM, right? So let's bring it back to here. Cal said it earlier. If this is the gospel industry, how are you proclaiming the gospel of Jesus Christ in your music? If you do an inspirational song and you barely say Jesus, that ain't gospel. If you're doing a song, you're gonna talk about the miracles that he did and talk about repenting of our sins because we have to live right. That's not gospel. You're just doing inspirational music. But as a producer, do you get into that theological discourse with them, or do you want to get your check? And that's the part, as Cal said, about somewhat selling yourself, which is, do you take the stand and say, no, I can't diminish who and what he is in my life because I wouldn't have this skill set or this talent unless because he bestowed it upon me. And so therefore I got to take a stand and say, no, I can't work on this. Or, hey man, I got this car note, mortgage, utilities is due. We're going to go ahead and get through this. And hey man, it'll probably get buried somewhere in somebody's playlist. I ain't worried about it. On to the next. It's a juggling act. Sometimes these records don't see the light of day. So sometimes you get a check and the artists don't even release it because they can't do the next step. As Kevin mentioned, they can't get a publicist. They can't find a publicist for the 6 months that can hit all these playlists now, which is the main thing. And then to get them on XM. And then they can't find a booking agent to get them into the right festivals, into the right show. They can't find a manager to help guide their careers, to help them make the connection. So their product may not even go nowhere. But if that check clear, hey, God be praised, we turn the tide, on to the next, right? So it's that back and forth thing. And I think at the end of the day, as I said, top of my point for this one is, hey, the artists are coming to you because they like your sound, and they hope that your fingerprint can help put together their picture in some form or fashion. And to thy own self be true. Like, God made you for a reason, so walk in your you-ness. Don't try to be anybody else. There won't ever be another Andre Crouch. We won't ever have a record like The Journey ever again. But we can be inspired by that record. Don't try to copy it. Be inspired by it. What Mano Haynes did for that record was breathtaking. That record is now heading towards 10 years old, and we still haven't heard anything sound like that. Use that as inspiration. Don't copy it, and just go forward from there to find your fingerprint and let that fingerprint shine. We all have individual fingerprints, so put that on music, and then that way we can hopefully start having more creativity shine forth, opposed to having Xerox copies of everything.
That's it.
That's good. That's good stuff. All that, man, all of you have said, because I think sometimes artists and even listeners, sometimes they don't really realize what you all have to go through sitting in that producer chair. A lot of people don't understand the demand that's been placed on you, and sometimes how you have to literally wrestle with yourself in terms of, how do I do this? How do I get this job done? Satisfy what the artist wants, but then also feel good about what I did, feel good about what I put into it. And a lot of times, people are just not aware of what that feels like, of what that looks like from the other side, because all they know is they've heard something they heard something you did. It was great to them. And so now they call you because they believe that you can take the same greatness you did from one record and now give it to their record because they just heard something you did. It's not even, and that's about as far as it went. And so they come to you and they just, and sometimes they don't get it, what it's like sitting in that chair. And so, and that's one of the reasons I asked that question, is because I wanted people to hear what it's like to sit in that chair, because it now may make an artist kind of rethink not only who they come to do their music, but also understand the mindset they need to come with when they come to the studio to sit down with you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I want to ask this because all of you to a degree have said this about you have selling your soul to the marketplace because you want the hit, you want to do what's mainstream, and all that. So my question is, how badly has the demand of the marketplace / the business of what we do actually hurt what we do in terms of gospel music? How has that helped it or hurt it? Because from what all of you said, it's a genuine tussle. It's really a tussle, and it somewhat challenges and tries to stifle creativity. So how badly has the business and the marketplace really hurt gospel music, especially right now, because we're almost living in a CCM dominated era to a degree? So talk a little bit about that. I'm gonna start with Cal this time, and we'll go Cal, Kevin, we'll go Carlton, and then Jonathan.
One more time, please forgive me.
Say that again, Kevin.
Repeat the question, you said.
Can you repeat the question? I just want to make sure I got the right in my head. Sorry, y'all.
I said, how badly has the business side of what we do and the demand of the marketplace, how much, well, I won't say how badly, but how much has it hurt or negatively affected gospel music with everything that we've talked about tonight about, selling your soul to get a hit, creativity being stifled, losing identity, all that kind of stuff. So how has the business side and demand of the marketplace impacted it negatively or positively, actually? How has it impacted it?
This is just my personal opinion. I believe that it's hurt artists that don't know how to move into these new versions of gospel or genres. The ones that are very, very traditional. I think that it's hard to try and to get them or reinvent them. So it leaves them, it can leave them where they are, if that makes sense. And Kevin mentioned this a minute ago. If you listen to XM or you listen to a lot of stations now, you don't really hear certain artists that to us may have been heroes, or you know, they were groundbreaking, or you know, they were pioneers. You know, I don't hear Whitfield. I don't hear Whitfield on digital formats. You know, I don't hear a lot of you know, the Tommies. I don't hear, so it kind of just makes them become a fixture in time. What happens with that? You know, I think there's a lot of good that comes out of it, because, you know, gospel now, and with CCM being the way it is, it's a large market. It's just big. It's huge. It's huge. We're talking about filling arenas, huge. You know, with, you know, not churches, not storefronts, not, you know, there was a time when we thought a 600 or 700 seater was a big deal. No, like there are arenas being packed out now, you know, by Maverick City. Like the numbers are staggering. You know, so it's a double-edged sword to it. I think that's the only thing. If you can't move in the times, it can hurt you as an artist, even as a producer, because now what we consider gospel, contemporary, it's almost like it's scaling down. It's scaling down. I was just having a conversation, and maybe with you, Blair, saying how we don't who do we have left, you know, kind of keeping the flame? Ricky Dillard. Who's still carrying the fire, per se, where still we have that level of identity? That's the only way I see that it's hurting, but it's helping in so many ways, because we have money to do things differently. You know, we're not in the Savoy record days anymore. We got money, and money is moving this machine. That's all. You know, we have got God. Without the Lord, there's nothing that we can get done. But money moves this machine, man. And the dollars are just there now that weren't there years ago. But where does that leave artists like, you know, phenomenal artists like Doobie, man, phenomenal artists like even Kim Burrell. Kim never seen numbers like what is happening now with some of these artists. Where does that leave them?
Yeah, so. That's good, Kevin.
Yeah, mute right here. So yeah, I definitely agree with what Kyle's saying, man. That's real deep. I say, like, as far as the art, like the industry, like the people in the industry, where is it? I feel like sometimes it's you know, what I was going to say is that we're bowing. One of the issues that is going on with how we're trying to make this work is that we're bowing to people who really don't understand our culture. That's one thing. You know, we're bowing to people who don't respect our sound or where it's come from. You know, and so you got a lot of people out there, like I said earlier, in the industry now. The people who are out there, they don't respect creativity. They don't respect originality. They only respect dollar signs. You know, they only respect what's going to make them money. That's just it. So it's like, you know, the Thomas Whitfield stuff, though it is so, you know, Thomas Whitfield is my number one. I listen to him like every Sunday. You know, ever since Bobby Jones done went off the air, and it ain't really nothing spiritual on BET on Sundays no more. Like, yeah. Bro, driving to church, man, I got to put on Thomas Whitfield. Praise the Lord, praise the Lord, let everything that has breath, praise the Lord. I got to listen, I got to get in the mind. Because, see, I'm an old Kojic boy from Hartford, Connecticut. So we Pentecostal. So I need to get in that vein you know, when I'm going into church, I need that feeling. And, you know, I see somebody in the comments talking about, you know, that we got the Kevin Lemons and all those guys now. They're great. But at the end of the day, they still singing Thomas Whitfield music. So you gotta give the respect to the Thomas Whitfields, because without him, it would be no Kevin Lemons. It would be no, you know, Ricky Dillard is dope, but Ricky Dillard is singing music from the 80s still. He's still pulling up James Cleveland stuff. You know, Ricky Dillard is Ricky Dillard. That's you know, he's the king of the choirs. You know, what you gonna do about it? You know, but at the end of the day, you know, we're bowing to people who don't respect, and it's hurt people who don't really know what their sound is, nor do they really trust the gospel market. You know, so those people who really don't know, who are struggling with an identity crisis, you know, I think that's where the market's kind of hurting them, because it's like, you know, do I stay true to this, or do I try something that don't even really fit me? I don't even know it don't fit me, you know, but I'm going to go with this anyways, because this is what the market is telling that what I need to do. Maybe I do need to try. I've seen people who've been in Kojic churches their whole lives come up to me, talk about, or been in Pentecostal churches their whole lives, come up to me, talk about, oh, that whole Pentecostal, that's not me. That's not who I am. What are you talking about? Like, shut up. Yes, it is. Like, you know, and you think, and some of those same people feel like screaming over CCM music is who they are. And it's like, but you know, that's tacky, right? Because you're not even executing. Like, you're just gospelifying it into something that still ain't gonna sell, because the people in the CCM market is gonna say, what is this? They still gonna look at you as a gospel artist because you're not even executing it right. So, you know, there's still, you know, I love CCM. There's a way to execute it. There's a place for it even in our services at times. There's a place and there's a way to execute that. But at the end of the day, you know, gospel is going to evolve one way or another. And I think the trick is that we must be careful that it evolves and not evaporates. Because right now, it's on the edge of evaporating. And one of the reasons why it's on the edge of evaporating is because people are not respecting what it is that gospel music was meant to, or was intended for people to understand about it. You know, gospel music is not just a genre, but, you know, and I don't want to be that guy to get deep, but gospel music is also a lifestyle. And I'm still stuck on what Jonathan said, because he hit the nail on the head about, you know, there's a great falling away along with that great exodus. He said, I think he said it's like a great exodus of people, you know, and along with that great exodus were a lot of people who didn't want the responsibilities that should come with singing gospel music, because it's so spiritual. You know what I mean? Like, it's spiritual, and people are not living what they're singing about. You know, and I hate to be that guy, but you can't not talk about the great exodus and not mention the spiritual aspect of that exodus. The great falling away is happening is because a lot of people, they don't really care to live what they're singing about. If living this, if singing this requires me to live it at some point, then I want to classify myself as inspirational. I want to tell people that it's going to be all right. I'm not going to tell them who's going to make it all right, but I just want to tell them, you know, that it's going to be all right one day, you know, that everything will be okay one day, but I'm not going to tell you who to look to. I'm just going to tell you it's going to be. So, you know, there's a whole lot of unraveling that comes, you know, it's like peeling back an onion. You know, you see this issue, but then you got to deal with this issue. You see what's going on here, but then you realize it's an inside job. So, you know, I definitely believe that part of what is hurting gospel music and hurting industry-wise, or, you know, is it hurting or helping? Some ways it's helping because it's making people step their game up when it comes to the professionalism, when it comes to how they need to, you know, present themselves. Because, you know, like when we talk about CCM and all that, that's a whole nother market with a whole nother great deal of support behind it. You know, and like I think it was Jonathan that said, or was it Cal that said, you know, as producers, we're like a small percentage of the population of the industry. And that's the same way with gospel music. The gospel industry is a small percentage of the music industry. You know, so it's like when you talk about CCM, they got so much, they have such a great backing financially. You know, people still go buy hard copies. People will still go to Walmart and buy your CDs in CCM. And you don't have that same support. You barely have that same support in gospel. So, you know, it's just a difference in that, but it's definitely, in some ways it can help us, but in more ways it's kind of hurting because the people at the top really don't understand. Nowadays, they don't understand gospel. They don't understand us. And I yield back my time. No, I'm joking.
Go ahead,
That's
Carl.
good, man. Nah, y'all hitting it on the head again. It's the music gospel industry. That word industry, that means to bring forth and produce a product that has to be sold. So if I'm making a product that has to be sold, you have to curtail and produce what needs to be sold to your marketplace. The problem is that we're mixing two things that technically shouldn't have gone together in the first place. You can't monetize the gospel because he didn't monetize dying for us, but yet we're monetizing singing about a man that died for us. But at the same time, we want people to support us singing about that, even though what we should be singing about isn't popular because it's holding people to, like Kev said, a standard of life that needs to be lived. So no, stones may be thrown. Hey, it is what it is. I can take it. You can't be at a hookah bar and you can't be throwing them back, taking shots to the face and at dispensaries on Saturday night and think you're gonna sing Heaven Down on Sunday morning. That don't make no sense. That's the most contradictory thing we've seen in these last few years, where people are literally trying to be lukewarm, even though that whole scripture people, I guess, are expounding on further in these last few weeks. But anyways, it's hard to have the gospel industry be a received industry when there are artists, as we've said, that aren't living what they're singing about. So yeah, you might be an artist, a gospel artist on that platform, but what are you doing backstage? What are you doing in the green room? What are you doing on the tour bus, at the hotel, at the after mingles, right? After these concerts, when you're mingling with people in the industry, what are you doing? They see that. So now you're diminishing what you're singing about. So therefore, why should I believe in the God that you're singing about? You just an artist that just
visible now than ever.
It's more
now than ever.
Okay, and the thing is, Gary, go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I'm just agreeing with you because I hate to butt in like that, but
go ahead, bro.
I'm agreeing with you because it's even more of an issue now because of how technology has allowed people to see it in action.
And you know, that's where I was going, which was if we're supposed to be written epistles before all men, as far as gospel, right? Therefore, they're seeing your life live out. Why should I believe in what you're singing about if I see you live in a raggedy mess? Because again, you're posting on Instagram and social media, you know, TikTok, but your life isn't what it's supposed to be. That makes no sense. But then you want us to buy your record and support and come to your concert and be there in person when no, what you're doing is you're literally being you're literally filthy rags right now. So then when it comes back to gospel, we can't have a genre or a style of music be preserved because, as Kevin said, and as Kyle mentioned, and I'm pretty sure Elder Boyd is going to take it even further and pontificate on it. You can't have a ministry of or industry about gospel when we aren't living up to that standard and upholding that standard. Not saying being perfect, but you got to sustain from something. And let that's you singing about and you're playing about, let that be able to be seen and witnessed and not just a facade or using Jesus as your as your cliche, as your niche. Jesus is your marketing piece, because you could make it as an R&B artist or as a pop artist or as a country artist. So now I'm gonna sing about Jesus and y'all gonna put me on. No, be talented in who and what you are. Can you execute in that genre? Nah. Well, I love Jesus. Hey man, come on over. Nah, man. Keep all of that. Keep all. Cause at the end of the day, whatever we do down here, we got to give an account for. And whatever and however we proclaim or under proclaim his gospel, we're gonna all be held accountable for that. So those are my 2 cents, saints of God.
All right, come on, Jonathan, what you got?
Oops, sorry about that. I had my mic off. Going to be pretty much a regurgitation of what everybody else has said. Everybody has, beautifully articulated and hit the nail on just about every point. So I can only just kind of reiterate some of the things that have already been said in terms of, I think the question is, has it helped or hurt us as producers and musicians? And if we acquiesce to where we are in terms of, again, I hate to keep beating a dead horse, but if we acquiesce to where the marketplace is, then it's great for us, because, let's address the elephant in the room. If we're going to be just gospel musicians, it's not going to be a whole lot of money involved anyway, because gospel, for the most part, unless you're Kirk Franklin or something like that, you're not going to make a whole lot of money. But in terms of the money that it used to pay, in terms of what it pays now, if you're going to acquiesce to what the paradigm is, then yeah, it's great for us in terms of musicians, especially if you're going to be a session musician or something along those lines. You know what I'm saying? And then again, I told you before, and I think in an earlier conversation, that it depends on the producer and what your goal is. You know what I'm saying? I think Carlton and Kevin alluded to it. It's like, either you're going to be original or you're going to acquiesce and do what everybody else is doing to achieve those things that are widely acclaimed as successful, right? And so it's just, again, it's subjective. If you're going to be a stick in the mud and be original, because there are so many artists that I'm sure we admire, Prince being one of them, Michael Jackson being one of them. I mean, they borrowed in to some degree, yes, but in large part, they were originals. You know what I'm saying? So they didn't bend to, they created something different and then dared us, either to dislike it or like it. And so, to Kevin's point, obviously you gotta, collaborate with the artists and everything, and try to, produce whatever it is, or what something, if they even know. Let's start there. But if they do know, then try to complete the picture that they see in their mind's eye. And to what Carlton said, they want us, and so they want some version or all version of us. And so I'm still going to, double down and say that at the end of the day, in conjunction with making sure that, we are acquiescing to the artists, and are we going to acquiesce to the artists? Yes. Are we going to acquiesce to the marketplace? I don't know. It's subjective. It depends on what your goal is. It depends on what the artist that you're producing for, goal is, at the end of the day. But to kind of culminate everybody's point, what are we doing, right? And like Kevin said, and Carlton as well, without the risk of sounding deep, I think it's in Joshua 4, where, Joshua, after he brings children of Israel over the River Jordan, he says, or God told him, he said, hey, go to the riverbank and I want you to gather some stones. And once you gather them stones, I want you to go and build a memorial. And so when you build the memorial, and when your children and your children's children come and walk past this memorial, they're going to say, what mean these stones? And that's going to invite a conversation in terms of sharing and keeping alive the prosperity of God. Having stated that, who is going to create the memorial for where we were? Who's going to do that? Right? Because who are we pointing back to where we came from? Because to Kevin's point, it's almost invisible now. So there's no posterity. When we were kids, you know, the producers and musicians and artists before us pointed back to those stones. This is where we came from. And the artists and musicians before them pointed back to those stones, all the way back to, like we said before, Mahalia and Thomas Dorsey and so on and so forth. But now the prosperity, I think somebody has dropped the ball. I don't know if it's us in our generation, and certainly the generation after us. They're not going to have any understanding of, you know, what came before us because they're not interested. And part of the reason why they're not interested is because we are, in my mind's eye, we're not doing enough to preserve the memorial so they can ask questions. What mean these stones? Where is this coming from? How are you thinking the way that you think? What I think somebody, I can't remember who said it, but who's inspiring you? Who are you inspired by? How do you think? These younger producers they're not asking those questions, at least not to the people who they need to be talking to, right? And so that's how the old, and don't get me wrong, again, as paradigms change and shift, we have to change according to the times that we live in. So I understand that. But there has to be some kind of preservation. I think somebody used the word preservation. There has to be some kind of preservation of where we came from. Because if we don't preserve where we came from, then it's not going to be, I think, to what Carlton was saying, it's not going to be gospel anymore. Never mind CCM, it's not going to even be gospel anymore. And I think a large reason for that exodus that I was talking about earlier is because, again, you know, the gospel has standards. It's people, you know, and I'm getting ready to go off somewhere else, so I'm gonna just stop there. But you know, we have there's a huge misnomer in terms of, you know, what the salvific, you know, experience is in terms of, you know, living a saved life and so on. God loves me for who I am, and you know, and he understands, and that's what it is. And so at the same time, you know, we don't want to preach, you know, and propagate a gospel that sounds spooky and scary, and you know, God's gonna get you, you know. But at the same token, the gospel has standards. There's a certain life that has to be lived, and I think a large portion of this is not me throwing rocks or stones, but it kind of is what it is, because the message has changed from live a saved life. Because if you don't live a saved life, then there's consequences. If you do live a saved life, there's consequences. Until now, a lot of, not all of, but a lot of the lyrics and the overall idea, the overarching idea is, you know, kind of anything goes. God is love, and you know, if God is love, then He understands, and that's what the lyrics speak to, right? And so that's been, I think, in my mind's eye, has been a huge supporting cast in terms of people's thinking. You know, it's the Jesus music, it's the hippies. That's what it points to redemption, yes, but it points to acceptance, right? And that's what's going on in the marketplace at large, is acceptance. And that kind of, you know, like Carlton and Kevin said, okay, well, where's the standard? Where's the standard? Are we going to acquiesce and make that money? Because at the end of the day, I understand that we are musicians, and at the end of the day, we do what we do to get paid, because, you know, a large portion of us, you know, do this for a living. So I understand that, but there has to be some kind of standard. There has to be some kind of separation. There has to be some kind of, okay, yeah, I'm not going to do that. There has to be some kind of standard. And, you know, until we get back to that, until we get back to building the memorials from where we are, then I think, the gap is going to become larger and larger and larger. And to everybody else's point, it's going to eventually, gospel music, what's that? What do you mean gospel? I don't know what you're talking about. Inspirational music, that's what we on, but not necessarily gospel.
Wow, man. That's a lot.
Sorry.
No, you good.
That was excellent.
But that's what needs to be said. I mean, everything that you guys have said is what needs to be said, because if you don't have a standard, then that means you'll do anything for anything in whatever way it is, if there's no standard, because the standard is what is supposed to separate gospel from everything else. The standard is supposed to, and we are supposed to be the model for what everybody else does, instead of following everybody else. That Jesus was never the follower, he was followed. He was always followed. He was never the follower. And he set the standard for what should happen. And it made everybody look at him and look at the Pharisees and then be like, but if they're looking at us if they're looking at us as the same, and there's no difference, and they don't see any standard, what do we have then? What do we really have in the end? And so that was great. And so as we wind down here, because the time is spent, but this has been a great conversation. This has been great tonight. But I want to wind down by simply asking this, and I'm going to kind of give you a part A and B to the question. And the question I'm going to ask is actually, someone had wrote it in the comments, and it was actually a question I was going to ask. So I was like, wow, this is interesting. And so part A of the question is, how do you maintain your creativity and maintain identity without losing the standard today? What is, and I like each of you to just give me one point of how you can do that and still uphold the standard with the temptation of, wanting to receive financially from what you do, wanting to, because again, it's no secret, as Jonathan said, I think all of us have said, that when you do this for a living, you want to get the bag, because you got family to take care of, you got bills, you got to do what you got to do. So even coupled together, what is one thing that you can do to maintain that level of creativity and identity and not lose the standard? So that's part A. And then part B would be, what is the future of gospel music then, in light of everything we have shared tonight, especially concerning CCM? What's the real future of gospel music in your view? And so we'll start with we'll start with you, Carlton, because I see you ready to.
No, wait. I was about to say, man,
yeah.
Can you type that in our chat? Because we going to end up forgetting them two questions.
Oh yeah, sure, yeah, no problem. Yep, I'll put it in there for you. It's all good.
I ain't gonna lie, my mind started slipping already. I was like,
because
like, what do you say?
Because the Pericles and the Partridge and the Pear Tree, like, hold on, bro.
I got you. No problem.
Woo!
All right, so that first question was.
So part A. Now, are we doing this in MLA format or Chicago? I'm going all the way back to school, because this is essay type. Man, it's SATs you asking, bro. Golly.
Do it can you do it in 2 minutes?
For part A and 2 minutes for B, or 2 minutes for A and B? For my A and B selection.
Let's call it 3. 3
All
minutes
right.
for MB.
For 3 minutes
I'm
for them
typing
both
it-
to go. All right.
yeah,
So let me see the
typing it in
question.
the
So, all right. While he's typing, we thank God for you all tapping in tonight to tonight's service on this Monday evening. And you would be a blessing
Ignorant.
evening. If you would be a blessing to the Right Reverend Minister Blair Troublefield, I believe he's going to have a donation button you all could hit and push at some point in time to support this. You know, it costs money to have lights and internets and phones and gizmos and gadgets. And this brother needs y'all support and love. You know, love is what it does. Amen, saints. Amen, nobody. Type in the comments, love is what it does. And what we need you all to does is go ahead and support this brother. Anyway, I believe he has the Zales, the Vimos, the Cash App, the PayPals. I think he'll even take carrier pigeons with money strapped to it that you send to his address. Either way, we want to support this young man and encourage him. Now, that money, that jingle in the pan, that'll spend, but that quiet money will take it a long way, saints. That quiet money, that money that you just fold.
But
right.
he said carrier pigeons though.
Hey man,
right.
Listen,
right.
Hey man, if your service is down, you got to get it how you. I don't care how you get it there how you can.
That is funny.
All right, so I'll get this out the way. So, okay, how do you maintain your creativity and identity in this day and time without losing the standard? And B, what is the future of gospel music? Okay, so how do you maintain creativity and identity in this day and time? You have to be held to a standard. So at the end of the day, if you aren't around people that can not hold you accountable for how you sound as a musician or a producer, if you don't have a sounding board to help you vet out what you're doing, you can't be held to a sound standard. If you aren't under a minister or pastor or church that is preaching the canonized gospel, then you can't be held to a standard of life in regards to who we are as Christians. So that's that. So if you put them together, there has to be somebody to hold you accountable. So are you putting in the work, or are you taking the easy way out and that'll do? So when it comes to gospel, are you learning all the routes, right? Or are you skating by? CCM makes it easy to bring it back to where, hey, those 4 chords, I either can play block or play a drop too. Even though I don't play keys, that's kind of what I kind of hear, right, in those forms. But in gospel, hey man, that's Midwest phrasing. You got Doobie in Connecticut drop. You got their drops, and Ivan Powell drops from the sky. That might be in the song. Can you learn that? Hey, you got to learn West Angeles and Jason White and Mike Burrell, how they phrased in voice, which is Kevin Bond, but we're not going to go on that, right? You got to learn the genre that you're in and execute it efficiently and have somebody hold you accountable to doing that, whether it's your lifestyle or your musicianship and creativity. What is the future of gospel music? I believe the future of gospel music is bright. And the future of gospel music will be bright because there are those who don't want to be a carbon copy. There are those that never change. Again, this is not to be a cap, but I have every single one of Doobie's albums, every single one. And Doobie didn't change his sound on any of the albums. So the thing that was dope was you never heard anything like that, but yet it still was gospel. So this may be your last time. Nobody has taken an old song like that was a old altar call to get saved song and slapped the groove on it. But yet it still was making you think about, hey, you can get raptured at any point in time. I got to be ready.
Yes, sir.
That is what I hope the gospel music industry and the genre will be able to do. Bridge the gap between the two. Can I be able to respect what was, operate in what is, and help be a stone to what will be?
Yes, sir.
Amen.
I think that's that. Who was next? I forgot who I said what order we was going in. Well, go ahead, Cal. Your mic open. Go ahead.
Question A: how do we maintain creativity and identity in this day? The standard will always be the standard. What's the standard? Holiness is right. That's the standard. That's your lifestyle. Now, this is where it can get tricky. What do you choose to do in terms of your music, and does your lifestyle matriculate and carry over into your music? As we begin to get older, we can make educated decisions on what we decide to do and not to do. When you're younger, you're fired up and like hungry, and you bump your head, and like I said, I'm the oldest one in the bunch, so I can make choices, and it's not going to affect me financially or anything like that. But in terms of keeping a standard, your lifestyle is the standard. If you love the Lord, how do you treat people? How do you talk to people? Do you forgive quickly? Do you hold it? Those are the standards. That's Bible. Now, if you're talking about your music, how do you stay creative? Most time you stay creative by not listening to the same thing all the time. You purge your ears a little bit. I love listening to traditional jazz. I listen to a lot of Disney. I listen to, Louis Armstrong. That's the kind of stuff I listen to. And then next day, I might want to just listen to the classical station so I can hear some movements and I can hear orchestrations and things like that. And then, okay, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and put it on 93.7 and just kind of hear, just to stay in touch so I can keep some relevance with the next generation under me. And does that change me as a person, though? Because I want to be clear when we're talking about standard. Are we talking about musical, or are we talking lifestyle? Which one? Because if we're talking about what we do, Christian and gospel music, well, it starts with your lifestyle. And then it doesn't matter what artist you get called for, your lifestyle can still matriculate over to that, and they can be impacted by that. You don't have to change with every situation and every environment you go into. So that's the standard. But, again, that's layers. That's something someone has to, work out on their own soul salvation. So in part 2, what was that? You said, what is the future? What is the future? You know what? It's tricky. Hold on. It's tricky. John said something that really stuck out to me. And in the last days, there will be a great falling away. In the last days, there's going to be a continued movement away from what we consider holiness. It will be acceptance and inclusion and that thing. But you do have the ones who will be keepers of the flame. It may grow a little smaller here and there because we've already seen it happening. But that's just the times we live in, and the Bible speaks of it, But it's all about, what are you going to decide to do? How are you going to impact whoever is in your circle? You're not going to be able to reach everyone, but if you can reach a few, your work is done. I love Christian Brown. That young dude, he's got it. He got the bump on him. He's got that oil, and he still got a feel of that CCM experience, but it's still not losing the identity. So, and he's in his early 20s. So you got ones that are going to keep it, man. But as we continue to go further down the line to where the Lord is coming back, we're going to see things fall away. It just is what it is. I just want to go to heaven. That's my concern now.
I know that's right. Jonathan?
Again, not to regurgitate and be redundant, but in terms of how do you stay creative and maintain a standard, much like everybody else has said, in terms of a personal standard from a salvific standpoint, that's a decision at the end of the day. I mean, I can dress it up with all of these big words, as I often like to do, but at the end of the day, it's a decision. Either you're gonna do it or you're not. That's the black and white of it. That's the bare balls of it. Is you either gonna do it or you're not. That's it. That's all. So that's a decision that you have to make. That's a personal decision. In terms of musically, I think also to what everybody has also said, you got to stay by the fire to bear some relevance. I do think that we've oversaturated this word of dated. You know, that he sound dated, they sound dated. I mean, I understand it, you know, from a creative standpoint, not from a creative standpoint, but I understand it from a cultural standpoint. Is you sound dated, but at the end of the day, a creative is a creative, you know, and everybody has a sound, and everybody can appreciate, you know, a certain approach to, you know, a certain record or whatever. But I do think that, you know, as creators, we have to, like Cal said, stay close in some respects to the fire to remain relevant to what is now. And in terms of standing creative, like I said, without being redundant, it's about, you know, again, what the artist wants. That's number one. And then number two, at the end of the day, I'm going to still triple down. And you just got to bring, you know, what you got to bring your soul to the matter, you know, if the situation will allow. You know, like I said, there was something that Carlton said stuck with me and resonated, is that they want you for you. So at the end of the day, you know, I'm going to give them me. And, you know, within, you know, the time and the genre that the paradigm that we live in. And in terms of what is gospel music going to sound like, or what's the future of it, I think all of us, to some degree, can bear witness to the fact that everything always comes back full circle. To Cal's point, from a eschatological standpoint, you know, there's going to be an even greater falling away. So it's going to get worse. The Bible talks about people are going to develop itching ears, and because they're only going to acquiesce to what fits into their mind's eye, what fits into their mind's process, what actually what's the word I'm looking for? What actually, you know, I guess gives them pause, you know, to do what they do. So at the end of the day, the falling away that we speak of is going to get worse. But I do think that there's going to be a remnant of people, not necessarily just on this call, but, you know, universally, worldwide, Christian-wide, there's going to be a remnant of people who are going to stick to their guns in terms of, you know, preserving, you know, what was, what is, and what is to come. But I think that, you know, it bears some relevance in terms of making sure that we can't lose our identity. We can't lose that identity, because if we lose our identity, like I said, in terms of that posterity, what are we going to pass on? You know, what are we going to pass on? If we lose our identity, the next batch of artists and musicians and producers, they're doomed, because we're not going to hand them the baton. What are we going to hand them? But again, you know, in terms of the choir music, I think that although choir music to some degree has taken a step back, you know, to CCM and praise and worship, again, everything comes full circle. So I think there's going to be a reorientation and a revisiting of where it all started. I don't know how God's going to do it, but I think everything always comes full circle. Even how we dress, some things that we used to wear back in the 80s and the 90s when I was in high school, they are starting to come back full circle in terms of fashion. So everything always comes back full circle. And so I think we'll be fine. And that's all I have to say about that.
All right, Kev, close us out, man.
Amen. Did not our hearts burn on tonight? I'm sorry. The old joke me and my brothers be having. But I'll say like this. So like the first part, How do you stay creative? And let me make sure, hold on, what am I doing? Let me make sure I'm reading this question right. There's two-parter. How to maintain creativity and identity in this day and time without losing the standard. So what I think I'll say for that is one of the main things that I preach all the time is that I believe in the 3 Ps, which is prayer, practice, and play. I believe when you pray, you speak to the Lord, you allow the Lord to speak to you, especially when we're doing this thing called gospel music. You have to have a spiritual connectivity, you know, to the Holy One, to the Lord above. You have to have that connection, you know, that connection to like my late father used to say, to get those spiritual downloads, you know, from heaven. I believe, you know, praying and spending time perfecting your craft and practicing, and then just taking time out to play and spend time with your instrument is really important in creating that, you know, your identity. Playing around, of course, you're going to listen to people. You're going to always be inspired by people, you know, but taking time out to practice and play is what helped me to create my identity. And being inspired by people like, you know, of course, my late Uncle Ivan Powell Sr. and the one and only Derek Jackson.
Yes,
you know,
sir.
Guys have heavily inspired me. But when you take time in of course, you know, the Doobie Powells, my dad, Hubert Powell, who don't get the credit for pioneering and starting gospel jazz. I'll say it. He don't, you know, nobody else got to say it. But, you know, without my dad, there'd be no Ben Tankard and all these folk who actually learned from him. You know, let some of these other folks say it. They started it. But my dad has been doing that, did that in the 70s and in the 80s. He was doing that stuff before people really understood what it was he was bringing to the table. They thought it was weird. They treated him like they treated the Hawkins. You know, they called the Hawkins hippies and stuff because of how they dressed. I think Jonathan was talking about that. You know, they dressed differently. They didn't have one. A lot of times they didn't have any traditional church robes, and the music didn't sound traditional. So they called them, even in the Kojic church, they tried to oust them out because they went up against the grain with how they looked, their presentation, and how they sounded. And now it's like that's traditional gospel. But you know, these guys, they you know, empowered me. They influenced me rather, and they influenced me. And I think playing and spending time on your instrument helps you to create who it is you're supposed to be by who you're influenced by, and not just be a carbon copy. Don't just go on YouTube and listen to Corey Henry and say, you know, and that's another guy that you know, I tell this story all the time about my dad introducing me to Corey Henry. Like physically, me and Corey Henry met. I was 5 years old. He was 4 years old. And he came to my church and he played in every key. And ever since that day, you know, he changed my life. He changed Doobie's life, you know, but me in particular, he's one of the reasons why I even started playing, because I didn't know anything about child prodigies. And when I saw Corey Henry play at 4 years old, his late mother brought him to my church because she tried to get him on the TV shows. And all of the talk shows said he didn't fit the description for, you know, kids who have talent. She sent in the videos of him playing organ in every key. They said he wasn't good enough. I know they're kicking themselves now, but, you know, my dad let him come to the church. And, you know, if I don't know where I would be if I had never seen that with my own 2 eyes, somebody at the age of 4 playing in every key and carrying the service, like literally like churching them in G at 4, which is crazy. But we still got the cassette tape. So, you know, but, you know, watching these guys, spending time on your instrument, being influenced by these guys, people nowadays, they like to go on YouTube and just look at what they do and become a carbon copy. They look at what Corey does. They look at what Glenn Gibson does, and they just take it note for note instead of taking it and letting God download to you how he wants you to interpret. So there's a lot of stuff that I'll play that I'm influenced by my Uncle Ivan. I'm influenced by Derek Jackson, Dave Blakely. You know, I'm influenced by these guys, but it doesn't really come across in my playing. It sounds like me because the Lord gave me the interpretation of how it works for me. So I'm saying, so I say, you know, that's one of the things that I believe, you know, set me. Of course, you set that bar for yourself. You know, when you have that standard for yourself, you know, you could be good at whatever it is you do. It don't got to just be organ. It could be drums, bass. When you set that standard that you don't want to be average, that you don't want to be somebody that's just that's just good at sounding like other folk who are great. Because then now you're just good. They're still great, but you're only good. And if I need great, I'm not calling you for the gig. I'm going to call who you sound like. If I want Corey Henry on the gig, I got Corey's number. I will call Corey and fly him out, whatever. But, you know, these guys, you know, when you set that bar for yourself, you know, and, you know, you stay creative. I believe you stay creative in meditation, and, you know, meditate sometimes is good. Like Mike Burrell taught me how to, you know, and that's another guy that really influenced me. Mike Burrell, I worked side by side with him. We did recordings together. We did a few recordings together. And of course we worked in Church of God in Christ together, playing side by side, you know, for the services and different things and all that stuff. And even doing these, you know, musicians clinics and stuff with him. Mike taught me the importance to, and I think somebody else said it, letting your ears breathe. Letting your ears breathe is one of the most trickiest things that a lot of people don't realize is a major part to you know, developing your ear and developing the concept of what it is that you're hearing. Sometimes we have so much music going in our ears, it's getting scrambled. When you really let your ears breathe, when you step back after doing a long days of rehearsals, or it'll even help you retain music better. When you step back from doing long nights of rehearsals, or, you know, recording in the studios, you know, you live in Nashville, and a lot of my homies in Nashville, they get called to do studio work all day. They'll just stay in the studio and record all day for different projects. You know, oh, they need organ for this project. All right, bet. They need keys for this project. But there's an importance in letting your ears breathe. And like Mike taught me that when we did a session one day, one weekend, and, you know, the session was over, we done, we riding back, going to get something to eat, going to a restaurant. And I was younger, and I was about to like play him some of my tracks, like, yo, check out these tracks I'm doing. He was like, man, turn that radio off, man. Let your ears breathe. He literally turned my radio off, and we just rolled in silence for like 15 minutes. But in that, he taught me the lesson of letting your ears breathe, so that now a lot of times I'm in my car, and, you know, my phone automatically connects to my car. And a lot of times I just hit that off button because I want to allow space for the Holy Spirit to download stuff. Sometimes I'm driving, and some of my, you know, some of the greatest things musically that the Lord has given me came from me either sitting in Bible study, listening to the testimonies of the people, or riding in my car and allowing the Holy Spirit to download music into my ears. And sometimes I'm sitting there and it's in silence. And, you know, that silence is like, literally silence is golden at times. So you take that time to be to be better than average. You know, I take the saying from Bishop, there's a Bishop Dixon in Texas that told me this, and I take this everywhere I go. If average is acceptable, amazing is not achievable. So when you're stuck somewhere being average, and you're trying to do things, and you're not trying to, you know, broaden your horizon, you're not trying to, you know, do things in a better light, you're going to be stuck being average, and you'll never achieve being amazing. And so, you know, I feel like the future is bright. I think where we struggle right now is the people who are supposed to hand over the baton. You know, I feel like the baton toss is where we're at right now, because people have to realize what they were anointed for. There's a group of people who were anointed to usher us out of where music was. And there's another group who was anointed to usher us into where music is now or is going to be in the future. And that group, those groups have to be careful that they don't drop the baton, because then you have that question of where's, like what Jonathan was saying, where pretty soon people are going to be saying, well, where's gospel music? What is that? What was that? Oh man, back in ancient history in 2020, man, gospel music, Kirk Franklin, and and it's like, it doesn't have to be that. It can still evolve and not just evaporate. It's definitely bright because people like I always shout out my brother Doobie. I got another brother, awesome brother, that has his own style, Billy Powell, and he has that style that people have kind of try to navigate towards Drake. When Billy could sing and rap and do it all in the same song, and when it was at one point people thought it was corny, but then other folk do it and now it's hot. But Billy is another one of those guys that has his own originality, and I feel like people like that, like the Ty Tribbett's and all those, we hear Ty's new record, and realistically, if you're from the East Coast, a lot of that stuff ain't new. I grew up listening to that stuff. Shout out to Paris Bowens and much respect to the Soundcheck band, but a lot of that stuff is stuff that Ty should have been put out, because it's original. It don't sound like nobody. So I definitely think, the change of the guards is coming, and that there's going to be a lot of people that will get in those positions to force feed what's going on in the media. And what we kind of touched on earlier is the force feeding of music that is being shoved down our ears. Some music is not dope. It's people being paid to tell us that it's dope. It's not that it's good. If you listen to it enough times, I think anybody ever seen the movie Pootie Tang? He put out a song that had absolutely nothing on it. He sat in the studio just like Carlton is doing right now. He sat in the studio and acted like he sang. And they marketed that, and it was the #1 song in the world. It was nothing on the song. And that's how some of the music is today. It's like we're being told that it's dope. We feel in our hearts like it's not really dope. It's like, man, I wish I could have got in the studio with some of these artists. I wish I could have got a chance to do a song with, I ain't gonna say their names because I'm not trying to, throw shade at the producers, but real talk, some of us sitting there like, man, it would be really dope to see a collab between, and this, like I said, there's no shade to the producers, but it would be really dope to see a collab between, Beyonce and the Doobie Powell. How musical Beyonce is, how musical Doobie Powell is, how musical Brandy is, how musical Doobie Powell or somebody, somebody it would be dope to see that collab. It would be crazy. And then you got a lot of other folk who are putting out music and they just have the backing. So it's like, I believe the change of the guards is coming, where what's being force fed down our throats versus, in the media will actually be, heartfelt, soul felt music. I have faith in that in the future. And, I'm done. I ain't gonna say I'm done, man. I'm sleepy.
I appreciate everything, man. That's a great close to the night, man. I appreciate everything that you guys have shared. You guys have shared what's on your heart, what's in your mind tonight, and this has been such a refreshing conversation. To hear all of you talk from your perspective. And I'm sure everyone who has been watching with us tonight and been hanging with us, I believe everybody has, been touched. They've learned some things tonight and been enlightened on some things. And it's my hope that if you are a musician, if you are a producer, or if you're an artist, if you're a singer, or if you're an artist, if you're a songwriter, and you've been listening tonight, my hope is that you will take all of this knowledge and wisdom that has been dumped tonight, that you would take it and use it to make make yourself better. Use it to hone your craft, your creativity, your originality, that you would take on some of this and really step out. I really hope that some artists who have sat kind of in the background and some who have been scared, maybe a little fearful or timid about getting out there, musicians included, I pray that tonight's conversation encouraged you to step out and come out. And my hope, I know for where I am here in Western New York, and all of us are here, and I know, Kevin, you're up in Connecticut, I believe. I would say to the local artists is that, and it was said earlier, but I just want to reiterate it because I often have this conversation with some of the artists in our area. Sing your music when you go out. Sing your music. When they call you for a concert, they call you for an event, they call you to open up for somebody. If you have original music, and especially if you have recorded it, and I can go into the store and buy it, or I can go on Apple Music, or I can go on Amazon and I can buy it, I can download it, please sing your music. Because I believe, and this is me personally, and I'm done because I really just wanted to listen to you guys and let you guys talk tonight. I didn't really want to say a lot, but I want to inject right here. Because part of the reason we're headed towards evaporation is that a lot of our artists, you guys won't sing your music. And the music is different. Some of it is different. And it is uniquely you.
Blair, that's a whole nother
Resort to covers.
That's a whole nother conversation that we might need to hear and have. Are you an artist or are you just a worship leader? But I'm not gonna get into that right now because it's late.
That's not nice, Kevin. That's not
nice.
nice.
Doc, you done brought it up now.
Artists are not. Some of these artists are literally not worship leaders, and some of these worship leaders definitely are not artists. So that's a conversation that needs to be had, because you got folk who are artists trying to operate. They get up and they want to operate like a worship leader. Maybe you should be both. Maybe you should be, but there's a time and a place. See, let me shut up. I'm sorry. Grace.
If it's a gig, be an artist. If a church service, be a worship leader.
If it's a concert,
I didn't come to entertain you. Yes, you did. I paid my money to get in here. You're going to entertain me.
Yeah. And in the meanwhile, I hope I have an encounter with God.
In the meantime, correct.
Yeah. I just wanted to say that because, and I'm actually, and I might be letting the cat out of the bag right now, but I have a locker room coming up where we're going to talk about just that and everything surrounding that. Because again, as I say to local artists, wherever you may be listening, if you're Western New York, if you're in Atlanta, Connecticut, if you're in the Carolinas, if you're in Texas, California, wherever you at, if you got original music, sing your music. Don't feel like because they called you to open up for Yolanda Adams, you got to sing covers. No, sing your music. The Lord gave you that music to release it to the masses, not for you to record it and then not touch it again. Sing your stuff. Please, please sing your stuff, because that's what's going to help keep gospel music alive and not go into the evaporation that, Kevin spoke of. And I think all of them have alluded and spoke to it. That's what's going to keep it from not going anywhere. If the artists who are the independent artists, that you've been called or whatever, sing your music. They call you, sing your stuff, and let's hear God's expression in you. What does God sound like coming out of you? What does God sound like coming out of your voice? What does God sound like through your pen when you're writing? We want to hear that, and we need to hear that. So I hope that everybody who's been watching, listening, like, I hope that you heard all of that and heard everybody's heart, and you've been encouraged tonight. And I want to thank, because the time is far spent, and we didn't mean to go this long, but the conversation needed to be had. And sometimes certain conversations, you have to spend a little time talking about it, because you can't just get in it, talk quick, and then out. Sometimes you have to go ahead and really talk about it if you're going to talk about it. If you're going to talk about it, let's talk about it. So I appreciate everybody who has hung in tonight and who's been listening with us. All of the guest panelists, all of you guys were phenomenal tonight. I appreciate your unique perspectives and views on everything. And this has just been great. And I just encourage everyone to go ahead. There's Doobie. What's up, Doobie? Doobie Powell, everybody. Good to see you, man.
How y'all doing?
Well with you.
I came upstairs and seen who was in the house, and it's Doobie.
Yeah, man, good to see you, sir. Pray
Good
all is well with you. But
that's a blessing.
That's a blessing, man. We just thank everybody for being with us tonight. Again, as I said, we will be back again, of course, next month with more in conversation, more dialogue like this on a different topic. Please feel free to go ahead and share this broadcast tonight, so those who weren't able to jump on can go back and watch the replay. The replay will be up. That's it, man. We're gonna go ahead and close out for tonight. Thank you to everyone. Appreciate you for those of you who have supported me and hung in with me since I started this thing back in 2020. Actually, August will be 2 years that, wow, can't believe it, but August will be 2 years that we've been doing this and having these conversations. And I just realized I'm sitting here like, wow, I'm about to hit 2 years. And so I thank everyone who supported and always tune in for the conversation. We're going to continue to do this until we can't do it anymore, or until Lord says otherwise. We're going to continue to have these different kinds of conversations. So please be on the lookout for the August edition. We'll be putting out the flyer and information as to what we'll be doing. Again, Carlton, Cal, Kevin, Jonathan, thank you. I appreciate you guys. Just give me 2 minutes. Don't log off of Zoom yet, but we're going to end the Facebook Live broadcast. So everybody on Facebook and YouTube, thank you so much. Have a great night. Have a great rest of your week. And we will see you on the next round.